Hello, and welcome to Unfiltered Dissent, the podcast where creators challenge the narrative and boldly speak truth to power. Dissent isn't just disagreement, it's democracy in action. I'm Amy Zellmer, author, activist, and unapologetic truth teller. This is a space for creators and activists who stand in opposition to mega extremism and the forces trying to silence us. If you are someone who wants to resist injustice, this podcast is for you. Here, we say the quiet parts out loud. No censorship, no sugarcoating, just raw, unfiltered truth. So let's get into it. Today, my guest is Corey, who goes by CMagz online, and we're talking all about bridging the gap. So, CMagz is a content creator who blends humor, honesty, and a healthy dose of sarcasm to make sense of a messy political world. Best known for his snarky educational satire, he has built a growing community across all platforms, especially TikTok, where he's approaching 100,000 followers in under a year and has racked up millions of views. His content speaks directly to people who are tired of the BS, curious about what's really going on, and want to laugh while they learn. Most of his audience is made up of men ages 18 to 44 who appreciate real talk, sharp wit, and the occasional mic drop. He is also part of the Unfuck America Tour, a nationwide movement pushing back against disinformation and political apathy, one honest conversation at a time. When he's not calling out hypocrisy or breaking down policy with a punchline, he's just a dad of three boys trying to raise good humans and make the world a little less ridiculous. So, welcome, CMagz. So happy to have you here.
I'm very happy to be here, Amy. Very happy. Thanks for that
So,
awesome intro,
maybe,
too. Mhm.
oh, you're welcome. Thank you. And, well, I think maybe a good place to start is by just sharing with our listeners. How did you get here? What brought you to this political backdrop?
Sure. So, I've kind of been involved, at least paying attention to politics for quite some time. I'm approaching 40 years old, so you kind of get to a point, especially with children, you're looking at all angles of this. And I kind of just, kept my mouth shut for the most part as politics kind of just evolved around me. And it wasn't until, the first Trump administration that I really started paying attention to the mess that was being had. I didn't really voice my opinion too much. I didn't know too much about politics, but I did start to educate myself in the background. And, throughout Biden's presidency, I had some likes and dislikes. If you like a president 100%, I feel like there's something wrong with you. You should challenge that
Right.
authority. And, he led us through some dark times, and there are some positives, don't get me wrong. But it wasn't until Trump won this last election that, I went to bed upset, angry, disappointed for so many different reasons. And the people around me at work, some in my family are supporters of Trump. So I didn't really have
Yeah.
anybody to voice my discontent with. So I figured take to the internet, right? Who if they don't like it, they won't see it. It was the day after the election. I kind of had it with everybody and everything. I posted a short, like 15 to 20-second video, and it blew up overnight. And I felt, wow, there's a lot of people that either agree with me or they like what I have to say. Let's post another and see what happens. And it grew and it grew. And it made me realize that there's a lot of people that like me, that think like me, that have the same kind of ideologies as I do. So let's see if I can build a community that I can't have in the real world on social media. And it blossomed into what I would consider you as a friend now, and the UFA tour, which has been one of the greatest things I think that this country needs at this point,
Hmm.
because we're trying to bridge that gap, right? And I do it every day in my life. My full-time job, I'm in the manufacturing industry, so the people that are in that industry are very much, blue collar workers. They wear
Right.
a red hat when they're not at work for the most part. There
Hmm.
are liberals, don't get me wrong, but generally speaking, and like I said, my family and some of my friends around me are also on the right. So I want to have that conversation, especially as a professional, in a way that's not abrasive. And I think that's an important thing that we need to start doing as a country.
Yeah. Yeah, and you and I both were just in Tampa for the UFA tour, and um, I think the biggest I'm still I keep promising my followers I'm going to do like a decompress video talking about my experience, but I think the biggest takeaway I had, because we had an event in the evening. So the first half of the day, we were outside Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA Summit, and we were just talking with some of the mega crowd that were there. And these are mostly college age folks that attend his Student Action Summit. And we actually had really good conversations. There was a few that were just kind of assholes, but overall, it was really good conversations. And then that evening at our event where we had Destiny and some folks debating, and it was 90% MAGA people that came that attended. And I know I was sitting at a table with six young men who were self-proclaimed Christian nationalist patriots. Um, Talk about an interesting table conversation. And,
Say the
you
least.
know, mhm. And but we had really good conversation. I'm like, hey, do you mind if I ask you about, X, Y, and Z? I go, I'm not looking to debate you. I really want to hear your perspective on things. And we had a really good conversation. I mean, I didn't agree with any of what they were saying, but we had a respectful conversation. And that's what's missing. Like, you and I both live in the online world, right? We have similar stories. Inauguration day, we both kind of you took off on TikTok and I took off on Instagram. Um, but there's so much hate online. Like every single day, I get 20 comments, you're a fat, ugly pig. You're probably the ugliest person I've ever seen on the internet. They always go after your looks. That's always what they attack because they think it's going to hurt your feelings and make you shut up. And they don't know me. So it
Same.
doesn't hurt
You
my
think this
feelings.
hat that didn't get its own fair shade? Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
And so, it's like, I think that is how we start to bridge the gap is having these one-on-one conversations, real life, in-person conversations.
Yeah, I think so. And it was very apparent at the event and after, right? I mean, the
Hmm.
response that we got on the internet from big right-wing creators who, they made videos where they were like, I'm going to the Unfuck America Tours event, or I went because I was going to cause a ruckus. I was going to
Yeah.
troll them and whatever else. And I left with new friends. I left with this sense of
Hmm.
that's not what the left is like. And the left needs to be more like them. It was very much an eye opener for I think everybody, to be honest.
Yeah.
We kind of knew. I mean, I'm sure I did. I know a lot of people did that. If you want to have that conversation, you just got to find that common ground. We all agree on pretty much a lot of things. It's just really when you get into details that we start to break away from each other. And to your point about sitting with those white nationalists at the table and trying to have a conversation to meet where you are in the middle, a lot of conversations that we had there were not one-on-ones necessarily, but they were one-on-ones around others. And
Yeah.
just like they do in debates, when you're debating somebody, you're not trying to debate that person to agree with you. You're hoping the people that are listening are going,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's a really good point. You know what? Maybe I should look into that a little bit more." The person you're debating is probably really steadfast in their position, and they're going to kind of dig their heels in when you're approaching them with logic or something that doesn't really vibe with what their position is. But it's the people around them that are going to make a big difference. That's why the comment section is really important. I know that there's a lot of hate and whatever else in a comment section,
Hmm.
but sometimes it's been inspirational for me. I've questioned myself for sure. When I've seen something in the comments that was like, oh yeah, that does kind of make sense. Let me look up that a little bit. But either way, I think that as long as there's civil discourse, there's a way forward, and it's this
Hmm.
whole headbutting, especially at the beginning of this, because that was the content I started making was
Yeah.
very short and very much a middle finger to the administration.
Yep.
And I've just in the last 8 months, 9 months, I've grown to realize that that's not how you get somebody to agree with you. I mean, I'm in sales. I know that's the case, but I was just angry. We got
Yeah.
our anger
Yeah.
out. Let's kind of like find that common ground and let's have conversations.
I get messages every day. I get a lot of negative messages, but I also get a lot of really positive messages in my DMs. And I get people all the time like, how can you keep doing this? Isn't this exhausting when you have all these haters in the comments? And I'm like, honestly, I have learned how to just turn off the haters. Like, doesn't phase me. Once in a blue moon, if they attack my character versus my looks, sometimes it gets under my skin, but for the most part, I can let it go. But when we were at the UFA event and I met several people who were attending Charlie Kirk's Turning Point, and they were looking to leave the Republican Party. They didn't agree with Trump. They didn't agree with Charlie. They didn't, and I'm like, right there, that's where it is. There are people who are looking to leave, and screaming at them and giving them the middle finger isn't going to help them leave. But listening to Destiny have a civil debate, right? Or, just hearing that other viewpoint could be enough
Yeah,
to bridge that gap and get them to come to the
I
left.
agree.
There's a lot of moderates. There's a lot of left-leaning Republicans. There's a lot of right-leaning liberals, right? There's a lot of people right in that middle pocket, and there's a lot of people who just straight up didn't vote, period.
And just like, those people you weren't just mentioning about, I'm ready to leave the Republican Party or I'm having second thoughts about the Republican Party. The problem with the left is there's never really been a place for them to come because, maybe they met somebody on the left that was too heavy on the policing of language. Or maybe they
Hmm.
met somebody on the left where you agree on 90% of the fundamentals, but that 10% just kind of, get out of here. You're not part of us. And they get pushed to the right. And I
Like
think the UFA
abortion
tour
tends
is,
to be
is
a
making
deal
that.
breaker.
What was that?
Abortion tends to be a deal breaker,
For
you
sure.
know?
For sure.
Um, Yeah, there's definitely like those single issue voters, right? That's why they always vote Republican is because of that single issue. And if we can just give them a little bit more of why they should come to the left than just that one thing, like abortion.
Yeah. And I think, like that's part of what I think it means to be a voter in America is not voting on single issues. I feel like that's a
Hmm.
little bit, I don't want to say selfish, but that's kind of the best word to use, right? Like I don't vote for universal health care because I need it. I vote because there's people that do need it.
Right.
And I think that that kind of needs to be
Right.
expanded upon with most people where they're not voting for that single button issue because it's something that affects them personally. They're actually trying to do it for the betterment of everybody.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I understand also that there's religion involved, right, with a lot of the decisions that people make. And that's a tough one, right? I'm not ever going to bash anybody's religious beliefs. You do you. I'm totally down with that. But I don't think that that should have any play necessarily in what policy is being discussed or whether or not
Right.
legislation is being written. I think
Hmm.
that's a big thing.
Exactly. And so before we went on the tour, Um, my internet's telling me it's unstable. It's starting to thunder and lightning outside. Um, so before we went on this tour, I had packed away. I live in an RV, so I had packed away my Constitution. So I went online and ordered my new copies of the Constitution, and I read it cover to cover. It's not a very long document, it's like 40 pages long. But it's so inspiring how our forefathers had the forethought of what they put in here, right? And the separation of church and state. Like they saw that potentially becoming an issue, right? And, like America is a melting pot. We always have been. We're all immigrants. We're all from different backgrounds, and Christianity is not the only religion. We are not a nation of like Christianity is not our national religion, right? Like people think it is. They like to think it is. Um, but we
It's
have
getting
so
less
many
and
different
less.
religions living here, right? So,
Mhm. And when the
um,
forefathers, wrote that document, and they were thinking about religion and whether or not it would be involved in the political discourse or whatever. I mean, at that time, I'm pretty sure that they knew Christianity, Catholicism, maybe whatever the Native Americans
Yes.
believed in. I mean, they didn't know about all of the religions that exist now that we're aware of.
Hmm.
They were just picking a handful, and they still had the forethought to say,
Yeah.
not a good
Yeah.
idea. Let's separate these. And I think
Yep.
that's a brilliant thing to have been able to recognize at that time and to put into the Constitution. Now, obviously, the Constitution does have its problems, right? We all can probably agree that there's a few things that need to be adjusted, amended, whatever it may be. That's a part of it being a living document. And the language that it's been written in has been very vague and confusing, and it's got to be updated, right? Right? Where's the ain'ts that are in there? Where's the new lingo? Maybe with Gen Z to write it. Maybe it'll be more interesting. But I think that there needs to be some sort of understanding that it's a living document. Things need to be changed. Some things need to stay. I just feel like any conversation that comes up about changing the Constitution is immediately met with a no, no, those are the rules. And it's like, I find that to be a dangerous pathway to be going down.
And I also, in the preamble, and it talks about how in the future we're meant to look at this document from the lens of when it was written, right? Like, I'm just going to bring up the Second Amendment. And back then they didn't have automatic weapons, and like we're in such a different world than when it was written when it comes to that Second Amendment. And so yeah, I do think things maybe need to be amended per se, for modern times, but it's also a tricky slippery slope too, right? Like, how much do we change it?
Yeah, exactly. And it's tough when you're looking at the very diverse political world that we're living in now, right? You're looking at the far left
Yeah,
and the far right, and whoever's in power, are they going to be the ones that are going to make the decisions as to how the Constitution is
right,
rewritten or what amendments
right.
put in there? And it's like, is that really the way to go about it? Now, I
Yep.
know that there's a long, with like two-thirds of the states and 60% of however that works. I know it's very difficult to amend something. I understand that. But it gets more dicey when you have situations where one party is controlling so many different
Hmm.
parts of the government and almost the country to a certain degree that it can get scary. It can get very scary. Um, it's a
I mean, that's
dangerous
sort of what Trump's
dangerous
been
time.
trying to do with the Supreme Court. I mean,
Yeah,
we've witnessed what's been going on there. So,
yeah, and it doesn't right. Those laws are in the Constitution that
hmm
he's still going against. So if he's doing that, then what if he had the ability to rewrite something? Like, oh my
right.
goodness, he would definitely be going for his third term in 2028 if he was allowed to do that. But luckily, we
Yeah.
have these blocks in place, these measures that you have to take in order to get to that point. So as long as they still exist, I'm glad. All of these executive orders he had put out and the lawsuits that have come forth, they've won like 60-70% of them. They've stopped him to a very, very big degree
Hmm.
on a lot of them. We're hearing about the worst of the worst, and a lot of that is
Right.
thankful to the Supreme Court and all the other nonsense that's going on. But the long story short, the Constitution still has power right now, as far
Yeah.
as we know, right? So yeah, it's a tough one. It's definitely a tough one. Now, do you think that amending certain parts of the Constitution versus I don't want to say a full rewrite because that's basically an amendment, but do you think that that would have some sort of a play in bridging the gap?
Oh, that feels like a loaded question.
It's
I mean,
loaded.
I feel like it would truly have to be a bipartisan committee that did it. Like, it would have to be, you know what I mean? Like, it would have to be like four from each side, right? Or whatever. Like, it would have to just be very bipartisan, um, in an effort to come together for the greater good. And I don't see that happening in the near future.
No, me neither.
Yeah.
And I hear a lot of in conversations with people on the right, every now and then one of the rebuttals will be, well, Japan, this, that, and the other thing, or they'll reference another country in terms of what their laws are and how they operate, especially when it comes to the
Right.
border topic. But they don't take everything, right? It's cherry picking, right? They're not
Yeah.
they're saying Japan doesn't, close borders, but they're not talking about the stagflation that's existed there for 3 decades. Like that's part of it too. So when you're talking about the Constitution, is it worthwhile to look at other countries and their legal document that kind of covers what their government's like? And if we want to move into a situation, just for argument's sake, that the left would like to see, of universal health care and paid
Hmm.
maternity leave and all of that good stuff, um, would it be worthwhile to also look at how that government's documents, whatever you want to call it, are, and try to mimic that? Is that a worthwhile conversation to even have?
Yeah. I mean, I would think so. I mean, you know, socialized healthcare has such a bad connotation. I don't know why. Like, why are we so against socialized healthcare? Like, people only bring up the bad points of it, right? Of what they've seen in like Canada or Europe. Um, but like, I have friends who have gone. I had a dear friend. She was in Belgium and had a heart attack. Nobody at the hospital spoke English. They like, had to bring in interpreters and all this, and she had like a bypass surgery and all this, 100% covered. And she was a visitor, right? A foreign visitor.
Hmm.
Um, and like if that happened here, it'd be like, here's your $2 million bill if
Yeah,
it were
exactly.
someone visiting our country, right? So
Yeah.
like I just don't understand.
A lot of the arguments that I've heard against socialized healthcare or universal healthcare, however you want to put it,
Yeah.
um, come down to the cost. How are we going to pay for it? That's usually always what it is. But nobody bats an eye on the right when you're talking about funding the military, but that's a different conversation. And then the whole, privatization of healthcare and insurance companies, and oh, you got to wait in line for 6 months just to get a doctor's appointment. It's people just
You do
it's so
now.
true, yes. But even with socialized healthcare, that doesn't mean that there aren't private insurance companies that you can still have.
Exactly. You can
So if you
still
want
get your own
faster service and
insurance.
everything like that, you pay
Hmm.
for it. Sure. This is for the ones who can't afford that. This is literally the safety net before you fall out of the
Yes.
bottom and go into bankruptcy just because you broke your leg. It's so silly.
Hmm.
It's so silly. You don't have to opt into it. You know, I don't understand it. I mean, I get the argument, but I don't understand the argument.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Corey, I mean, where do you see, like, how can folks listening, what, because I know that there's people listening going, you guys are crazy. There's no way I could sit down and talk with a MAGA supporter. And I know for some of the people, it's their family members. I know I just had someone message me that her husband and his whole family is MAGA and she is not, and she doesn't know how to talk to them. So like, what can we do to start having those hard conversations? Like, what are some easy ways to maybe ease into these conversations, particularly with family or maybe a coworker?
Generally, I would say that when you're talking with a family member, you probably know why, to a certain degree, that they
Yeah.
voted for the right in the first place, right? Let's say it's the economy, like the right. They think that Trump was going to be the best for the economy. He was going to bring prices down and all of that stuff. Instead of telling them what they're wrong about, ask them what they're right about. So, for instance, if
Yes.
they're like, oh, Trump is going to lower the cost of eggs on day one, right? That was the whole thing. Ask them, what are the prices of eggs now? Do you remember what the prices were then? I feel like if you're trying to tell somebody why a certain thing is the way it is, they feel attacked.
They
Whereas
get
if you make them
defensive.
think,
Hmm.
which they obviously didn't do, or they wouldn't have voted for Trump in the first place, if you make them think and get them to a point where they're like, "Oh man, let me question my own logic," it's pretty easy to find that middle ground of commonality between your position and their position. It's definitely a tough one, and it needs to be done in bits and pieces, right? Like I've tried to have long form conversations with my mom before, and it just kind of like after 30, 45 minutes, it's just like glazed over.
Yeah.
I just wasn't gonna vote for a black woman, that kind of like mindset. And it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
there's more to it than that. Um, come at it from a place of love, right? Always come at it from a place of love. Like you want obviously want your mom and dad and sisters and brothers and all of that in your family, in your life. So come at it, let them know that to begin with. Like I'm coming to you to talk to you or ask you these questions because I care about you. I'm voting and I'm pushing against this administration because I care about you. And then if you don't know what they voted for or why they voted for MAGA in the first place, ask them. Like, what was your number one issue? What's your number two issue?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And usually in any situation, you can find a common ground, right? If it's border,
Yeah.
if it's a border thing, we all agree that we should have strong borders to a degree, right? Keeping them out, bringing them in, whatever it might be, it doesn't matter. The point is, we agree that we have a country that has laws and there's benefits of living in America. And in order for you to be a part of that, it's probably important that we have at least some sort of a check at the border to make sure that people aren't just coming in all the time. I think we all can agree that that's something that we agree on. So now let's get into the nitty gritty of why you think Biden did a worse job and why you think Trump's doing a better job. And we have these in our pockets, our cell phones in our pockets, and you should be able to pull that up and just say, hey, let's just fact check it right here, right now, real time. Instead, I found a lot of the times, and it's almost always happened, if I'm in a conversation with, especially a family member, who maybe has a moral superiority that they feel over me, or they know better than I do, if I pull out my phone and I fact check them in real life, it feels like an attack. And you've got to be like, I'm not doing that. I just want to make sure that I'm not wrong. That's all I'm fact checking this for. I'm not fact checking this because I want to prove you wrong. I want to make sure that I'm wrong or I'm not wrong or I'm right or you're right or whatever it might be. It's all about framing the question and how you're going about the conversation. I think that that's a real problem that people have. I was in a live, not to stop you from going into anything you wanted to say. I went on a live, just scrolling through lives the other night on an account that is not my normal account, just so I can not be known, and nobody's going to say, oh, he's got all these followers. Let me pay it. Let me be careful what I say, right, or whatever it is. So I'm in there and I'm listening to how the conversation's going, and most of the people in there, especially the host, were on the left, and every now and then the MAGA supporter would come in and they would kind of like, do their thing. And when it was just us, the lefties, however you want to call it, the people on the left, the progressives in the room, they were very much talking about how we need to have conversation, how we need to not attack each other. We need to have open dialogue, that whole thing that we've just been talking about for the past 30 minutes. As soon as a MAGA supporter came in, it was like a light switch, and they just started, oh, you're a fucking idiot, and this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, you got to practice what you preach or not be in the game. And just people need to be more self-aware.
Yep.
Honestly.
Yep. And the left is really good at eating their own.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. We know it firsthand.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Corey, thank you so much for being here today. I want to make sure we take a moment to mention how people can find you, where they can find you online. I know you're on TikTok, you're on Instagram. Where else are you, and what are your usernames?
I'm on pretty much every platform. I try to spread the message as much as possible, even on the ones that are lesser known, like Clapper, for instance, or Blue Sky. I know it's been a little bit more now than it has been. But for the most part, I'm CMagz everywhere. That's CMagz. And you can also find me by my first and last name. That's Corey.Magyar, Magyar. That's pretty much how I am on every platform. Would love if you guys came and joined my community. There's a lot of great things that I feel are in the works, especially with the Unfuck America tour.
Yeah.
I think we struck a chord that this country really needs to get behind. And it has been kind of proven by the feedback we've gotten from those conservative creators during that tour. I think we're on the right path.
Yes. And I'm real excited to have quite a few of you from the tour on the podcast and really get the message out there about the tour. So, Corey, thank you so much for being here. It's been awesome chatting with you. And again, everyone can follow you on all the platforms. And I'll make sure wherever you're listening, hop into the show notes and I will have all those links for you guys.
Thanks so much, Amy. It was such a great time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, and that is a wrap for this episode of Unfiltered Dissent. If today's conversation resonated with you, share this episode and subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening so that you never miss an update. If you'd like to support the show and help amplify more dissent, join me over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Amy Zellmer. Your support helps keep these conversations unfiltered and unapologetic. And if you'd like to help support the Unfuck America tour, please use the Act Blue link in the show notes because it truly does take a village to support a tour like this. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Amy Zellmer, as well as TikTok. I'm at amyzellmer.tt for TikTok for more content, conversations, and ways to get involved. Until next time, stay bold, stay loud, and never stop questioning the narrative, because when we speak up, we don't just resist, we create change.